Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Mark Francois, to you first. I mean, do you have full confidence in the Prime Minister this morning?
Well, like many other members of Parliament, I watched the Prime Minister's statement last night. If I'm honest, I thought it was a bit bizarre. The House of Commons has absolutely flattened the deal twice. And, you know, working from first principles, if we're trying to persuade numbers of MPs to back a proposition, you don't do that by insulting them.
Philip Lee, I mean, you must have been watching the statement inside Number 10 last night, as I'm sure you were either there or watching the words that the Prime Minister used at PMQs. I mean, is it entirely appropriate for the executive to lambast the legislative branch in quite this fashion?
I think in the last few years we've had, enemy of the people headlines about judges, we've had attacks on the Bank of England, and now we've got the MPs being cast as the enemy of the people. I mean, ultimately the Prime Minister is responsible for what she says, but the person who wrote this speech really does need to have a good look at themselves. In this age where public discourse has been polluted by more aggression, more intemperate language, it strikes me as completely out of order that the Prime Minister can deliver such a statement. All MPs, Mark, myself, everybody is trying to do the best by their constituents. That is the way our representational democracy works. And anything that is said to try to undermine the position of Parliament in our democracy is fundamentally wrong.
So, I mean, we return to the question, Mark, I'll ask you first. I mean, do you see a way out of this? I mean, let's assume for a moment that the Speaker does allow a third meaningful vote. Let's assume that the European Union does offer that extension, as we're told. I mean, how do we get through this process? And Brexiteers and Remainers both are asking this question this morning.
Well, you mentioned Brexiteers and Remainers. You know, Phil and I are on different sides of the European argument, but we're personal friends. We've been friends for years. And the fact we can both come on this programme and have a rational discussion about the issue, augurs well for politics, if I could put it like that. In terms of where we go, it's actually quite straightforward. Today is D-8. We are 8 days away from leaving the European Union, which is what 17.4 million people voted for. If the Prime Minister comes back to the House of Commons and wants to put her deal to the House again in so-called meaningful vote 3, if the Speaker allows it, because he'd have to be convinced there's something substantially different from the last 2 times we slaughtered it, if he allows meaningful vote 3, it will be heavily defeated, because nothing has changed from the first 2 times. And as I've said before in interviews, if you keep coming back to the House of Commons and asking the same question, you'll get pretty much the same answer. The DUP have not folded, which is what the Prime Minister kept telling everybody they were going to do. The ERG have most certainly not folded, and most definitely will not fold. The agreement does not take us out of the European Union. That's why we've been absolutely against it all the way through, because what we're fighting for is to honour the decision of 17.4 million British people. And the Prime Minister has told us in the House of Commons at the dispatch box on 108 different occasions that she wanted to leave the EU by the 29th of March. Now, if she is now abrogating that, how are we supposed to take seriously anything else that she tells us in future?
Philip Lee, just on that point, I mean, the House obviously voted against the no-deal outcome, but it does remain very firmly on the table and is rather more likely today, by my assessment, than yesterday.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, and I would agree broadly with Mark's analysis. So this deal is not passing. Now, if I try to put myself in the Prime Minister's position, she's got, I think, 3 options. She either revokes, and I suspect then says, I've had enough, and walks away. She embraces no deal and says, right, this is what we're going to do. Or she pivots to my position, the position that Right to Vote, the campaign I chair, has, which is putting her deal, or indeed any form of Brexit, a Brexit that Mark would support, could be on the ballot paper as far as I'm concerned, versus Remain. I think they're the 3 remaining options for the Prime Minister, and I think she's going to have to make that decision this weekend.
Mark Francois, Philip Lee, friends on opposite sides of the Brexit debate. I think we should remember that, actually, shouldn't we, today? But thank you both for joining us inside.